Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Enablement Brew podcast. I'm Carly Lehner.
And I'm Melvina Elsaik, and thank you so much for tuning in. And we have a guest. Carly, do you want to introduce our guest?
Yes, we have Ben Purton here from RingCentral, and he is also a fellow one to watch on the 2023 list from the Sales Enablement Collective. So, Ben, we're so excited to have you today.
Excited to be here.
Woo! So before we dive in, we always ask everyone what's in your mug. So we hope you have a mug for us with a beverage.
Yeah, I do. I have a confidence level selfie no filter mug, which is my wife slash daughter's, and I have some iced tea, which I kind of didn't realize would make so much noise when I pick it up. But yeah, that's I've got some iced tea.
It's not very English of you.
No, it's not.
Carly?
I have hot tea. So I have just a cup of Yorkshire tea with oat milk in it. It is the morning, so that's what I'm going for today.
All right. Who's this guy on my mug? So this is my husband's mug, but I don't know who the guy is. Who's Rick?
Rick and Morty, that is. Yeah, it's like a cartoon, I think.
Yeah, Rick and Morty is a cartoon. Evan watches it as well, but I've never seen the show.
No, neither have I. But this is kind of how
No,
I feel
it's
today, like a little bit frazzled.
comedian, I think.
A little bit frazzled.
It's the end of the week, right?
Yeah,
So,
it is a
I
Friday.
figured, it's a good mug. Yeah, just black coffee for me with sweetener.
Oh, you do sweetener in yours. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah,
What kind of sweetener?
game changing. So I buy those sugar-free syrups for coffees.
Yeah.
And then Splenda. One or
Do
the
you have
other.
any syrup in it?
Not both at the same time.
I was gonna say, woo! Sugar-free syrup and then a Splenda. I guess it cancels each other out.
Yeah. No, I feel like coffee when it's a little bit sweet, like just tastes so much better.
Interesting.
But I can't have the calories of sugar, so hence the sweetener. But anyway, so excited, Ben, for you to join us on today's show. Obviously, 2023 started with a bang, like quite literally a bang. Every day you go on LinkedIn, you see the news, something is happening. And it's a very timely topic. I think when Carly and I first did an episode around laid off enablement, and the changes that we were seeing at the end of 2022, we didn't really think it was going to carry over to, February 2023. Hopefully February is the end of it. But we talk a lot about enablement, proving ROI, proving its value, but we never really look at it from a data perspective. We would love your thoughts around that.
Yeah, so I mean, I always find it crazy that companies are getting rid of enablement, but I also understand the logic. They look at it and go, okay, who doesn't have a quota? Marketing, enablement, brand, other pieces of the organization, sometimes product development, unfortunately. And they're the quick wins or the ones that immediately can be considered like, where's their value? Have they got a direct number against it? My sales leader looks at it like we're the fitness coaches. So if you imagine you had an amazing soccer team and you took out their fitness coach, they would still play well for a bit, and then suddenly they start to drop off, and people are like, why is this happening? We don't know what's happening, or it might be the manager's doing something wrong, so the sales leader or the sales people blame the players, but actually they just got rid of this kind of critical cog in the background that was sort of moving the pieces, and then very much in this case, keeping sort of sales fit and up to date with positioning, up to date with what they're doing. And it's a little bit like that. And so we've done a lot of work on how do we sell our team internally. And when we sell our solution, we quantify and we say, what's the ROI? What's the total cost of ownership? How will that look for the business? How will that repeat, and how can you sell that internally yourself? And it's the same for my leaders. Like, I have to make sure that they can justify enablement. And one of the big things is to quantify everything. So I can talk a little bit about some of those projects if you like.
Yeah, and Ben, so you have a white paper coming out, or we won't say much more unless you can share, but it is about this topic, which is great and super timely. So do you want to tell us a little bit about like the genesis of that initiative?
Yeah, so it was mainly last year. I was seeing a lot of and the start of this wave, and this wave is almost, it's peaking in January really, of this getting rid of enablement, cutting back on enablement. Sometimes that it started to rear its head in like getting rid of like new heads and expansion. Now it's got to reduction, which is the worst case scenario. And I was like, well, how can this be the case? Because like if I looked at my sales org, if my sales org went down 2% in efficiency in terms of their closure rates, that's my entire team almost paid for in that regard if I quantified it out. So how do I measure and how do we as enablers measure those projects in order to sort of justify not only our team, but we don't want to just justify it. We want to say, actually, we're a huge revenue creator. We're a huge advancement to your sales orgs because there's loads of stats on teams with sales teams with enablement or businesses with enablement are more successful, especially in SaaS. But yet we're seeing that as the area of reduction. So where's the divide? Often it becomes that firstly that you haven't quantified, but also sometimes C-level don't understand enablement. It still is relatively new for certain individuals, and they maybe see us as training, or they maybe see us as like an advanced form of marketing. Sometimes you get these sort of views of a business, and so it's about trying to build out that. So the white paper,
Auctions.
yeah,
The weird
yeah,
auctions. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I can talk through some of the projects that from my internal piece and some of the businesses that I've looked at externally as well. So I'll give you an example of a very simple project. It's almost one of the most simple projects I've ever done, but it's also quite powerful and quite easy inverted commas to quantify and therefore bring out some actual dollar figures to my leadership. So we were demoing too much, very popular in SaaS. You show me a demo. Oh, that person didn't see the demo. Bring another person in, get another demo. And suddenly you've done 5, 6, 7 demos for a sales cycle. Very popular piece. So we did a huge piece around how to qualify for a demo. Very simple piece. You need to have what value the product would bring, what features they want to see, and why they want to see them, and what impact that would have to the business. And we did a lot on that. And what we saw is a dip by about one and a bit demos per sales cycle on each. So on average, we want 1.1, if we're being exact. We saw 1.1 less demos per sales cycle on average. And that's quite easy to quantify because how much goes into each demo? Because it's a little bit like an iceberg. You have to prepare for the demo. Sometimes you need to build the sort of build our templates and stuff, and maybe some slides to go with it as well. So really, you're looking at 2 to 4 hours of people's time. There's often 2 to 3 people involved with that demo. When you quantify that out on what they earn and what they could be using that time for, it starts to get a huge figure in a relatively big organization or even a medium-sized organization. And that was such a tiny project. That's one of about 50 projects which are quite easy to quantify out there. Other stuff, such as we put in a new button at RingCentral to make our lead qualification clearer with our channel partners. Because what was happening was we would maybe talk to some of our channel partners and they go, oh, we'd like a little bit more granularity here. So let's automate all of that granularity so that they have a really easy to track report. What does that mean? It means that they have to chase us less stress, but also less time typing messages or perhaps going on calls to explain the downgrade reason or the upgrade reasons. And that automation, again, you then look at time. And often with these, I tend to lowball all the figures. Because if I even medium or highball, then people will say, "Oh, you've kind of dramatized those stats." So let's go for almost the lowest possible way. Let's just dramatize it the wrong way, because still the statistics and the math is really, really positive when you add all your projects up there. Um, and the big thing for me is like if you're a leader out there and you're looking at getting rid of enablement, just don't do it. Because just think about it like this. If you had 50 salespeople, let's say you're a small SaaS org and you have 15 salespeople and you're in that kind of unicorn or maybe growing stage and you're in a series of funding and you've got 15 salespeople. If all of them are performing at X, whatever X is, and you can increase by 10% their closure rates with loads of different projects, deal velocity projects, understanding product positioning, ability to work with different stakeholders and teams in your business, whatever those projects are. If your enablement team can get you 10% higher in terms of closure rates, you're better off getting rid of your lowest performing salesperson, mathematically, statistically, however you look at it, than you are to get rid of that maybe one or two, maybe even two enablement people in a company that size. So that's really the premise of the paper, is to focus in on what is I call relatable math, because all the leaders know this math, because when they're sold to, a good salesperson has sold them this way. So they're used to it, but they're just not used to it as much internally.
What are some of the key metrics that you look at RingCentral that you could share with our listeners?
I mean, we want to get to a certain stage in our sales cycle, because once we get to sort of stage 3, which is where we're sort of talking to the customer about the solution, our closure rates are off the charts, because we're fortunate enough to be a Gartner leader, a massive leader in many of the sort of APIs and field there. So we're really fortunate to have a great product. So if we can get to that stage, that makes a huge difference. So getting to certain stages within the sales cycle and actually breaking those down into different sort of sections. So like, okay, we're seeing a low amount of conversion of leads potentially. And then you deep dive into that, as you would usually do in enablement, and you go, what's causing that? Is it rep efficiency, or is it the quality efficiency or is there a process? Are we getting too much stuff that's people filling in a form online and they're not actually a lead? What is the reason for that? And if we can help with those percentages, and make it leaner, faster, and also get more conversion to the later stage, then we can easily mathematically map that out. It's about understanding what's causing that sort of blockage in each of those different stages. All the way from someone putting something on a website to put a lead in, to when we're closing business and rolling it out afterwards.
So you bring up a really interesting point, Ben, because I think it's really easy for enablement professionals to hear like, oh, we have like a project or a training that we need to do, and then just build it and then forget about it after it's built. But I really want to challenge enablement professionals to, one, ask, how are we going to prove that this worked? What metric are we looking to improve? Because if a sales leader can't tell you that, then it's going to be really hard to justify enablement's like time on that project, right? So asking questions of what metric are we looking to improve? It could be, like you said, the conversion rate from the cold call to a connect. Maybe like, do we have a data issue? Connect to meeting. Do we have a messaging issue? So what is the metric we're trying to improve? Get that baseline from the previous 3, 6 months, whatever you want to measure, average across the team, build your program, implement it, and then measure again. And that delta is what you can say the enablement team influence. But that's a lot of data. And I don't see a lot of enablement professionals having a lot of access to data, know where to go. Like, so what's your advice on if someone wants to be data driven in their enablement approach, but doesn't really know where to start? Like, how do you do that internally?
Well, when I started at RingCentral, I was an individual contributor. I was on my own, which is what probably the majority of people in Europe are in, that similar scenario or have been, and then they build out their team. So my current state is that I've brought someone in my team who's a sales ops whiz, and they help me with that data. Most people don't have that, and I didn't have that for the first sort of year and a half, 2 years when I was here. So it's about finding someone good in sales ops who you can sort of expand their career, almost like a sponsor, so that you can get them more visibility. Because truth be told, most people in SOPs would admit they don't get the most visibility and shout outs and look how great you are and well done. Some do, some organizations definitely do. I found a few people in sales ops, 1 or 2 in Manila and 1 or 2 in Europe, that were really good at getting me what I need when it comes to the math, and helping me, break that down. and I did a little bit of it myself, but not most of it. Most of the heavy lifting was done by sales ops, but positioning why they should do it. Because if I say like I need all these reports because I need them, they're going to say like, okay, great, join the queue. The queue's around the corner there.
Yep.
Whereas if I sort of say, look, this is a critical project, it's going to add huge value. I'm happy to sort of you to be the like co-sponsor of the entire project. So you do the heavy lifting with the SOPs bit, and I'll do all the other stuff, and it'll look and make us both look good, and it'll help you. Then that's really where I had to go down. As I said, luckily now I've brought someone in who was from a SOPs background, and she is an expert at sort of pulling the vast majority of what I need in team now, but I didn't have that for most of my career. So that's really I mean, we know the pillars of, and well, most enablement people know what I call the three core pillars. You've got your SOPs, your marketing, and your sales, and probably they're all equally important, but obviously sales is just about the most important. But yeah, that SOPs pillar is really critical to quantify. If you don't have it, you're going to be really swinging in the dark.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point. I think, especially this year, a lot of enablement leaders or enablement practitioners, maybe even people who are just starting off in enablement, are trying to become a little bit more self-sufficient, right? How do I master creating the reports that I need? How do I build out creating those dashboards by myself? How do I become self-sufficient so that if I'm trying to influence a particular metric, or I know that's what we're, focused on in this particular quarter, can I actually say what it is today, what we're hoping it's going to be? Am I able to, measure that change? And I think we're always talking about learning and improving. I think for enablement professionals in general, that is an area that we should all be striving to get better. And absolutely, I think you can always rely, on sales operations to give you the data that you need. But the more self-sufficient you can be, the more confident you are going to be in all the projects and the tasks that you as an enablement leader are working on.
You become more critical, and in this case, less riffable in that regard
To be able
as
to
well.
have those conversations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because you're basically you're all in one, as it were. You don't need you're not a cog in many. You're the cog basically. I think we've seen that quite a bit. Um, One of the big things for me is that I have a great relationship with my C-level and the head of sales in international. And you've talked a lot on this podcast in previous episodes about building that relationship and the importance. But when we're at these summits, a lot of the times when we're in these group sessions, when people are starting off in enablement, it's getting that really is a big piece as well, because what it's quite generic, but I have almost full autonomy on projects now from my sales leader. So if he says to me, "Here's an idea, make it work," and he won't need anything more, and he'll trust in that. And so if I need something like data, I kind of have a queue jumping slot now, in terms of I can get the data at high priority.
You
But
have
it
the
was
magic pass.
yeah. Yeah, I have the magic pass, but it
Yeah.
wasn't always like that. That's the thing. You have to really build that. So if you've got anyone who's like listening, who's 3 to 6 months in, and they're still thinking, well, this is all very well and good. You've got your own sales ops person, and you've been there for 3 or 4 years. So it's all very well for you to say, just keep at it with building that, with your key sales stakeholder, because you're going to make them more money and hit their target if you're doing your projects properly. So just remember that as a key theme. And once you have that buy-in, then the buy-in from marketing and SOPs is a bit easier, I think.
Yeah. How do we get that golden ticket, right? That's the question.
Yeah.
It is the question. Well, I mean, we had huge. My leader doesn't have time. He'll have an idea on positioning or go to market strategy, and it's not his job, but he wants that to be our strategy, and so he'll sort of impact if we can get it done for him. then we're making his life easier. We're making his sales life easier. Sometimes it might not seem it, especially if we're introducing a new process. So sometimes from the like, oh, we've added a new button. If you just say that, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. Okay, prove it to me. Prove it to me that that's going to make my life easier. Well, you know, those meetings you have to have, you on average spend 25 minutes a week on those meetings talking about that lead downgrade. Those are going to heavily reduce, if not go away completely because of this. But if you start to phrase it and position it in a relatable manner, like sales should do to their customers, but internally, then that really, really helps with enablement, I find. And yeah.
It's incredible, that love-hate relationship with enablement, right? You can go from being most hated to most loved very quickly. And vice versa.
And it's all like positioning internally, Ben, like you said. Like, I could introduce a new training tomorrow and reps would be like, ugh, another training? Why? But if I say, like, this is going to help you improve your close rate by 5%, and that 5% equals X amount in quota attainment, which means X amount in money in your pocket at the end of the quarter, they'll be like, oh, maybe I will take that training. So it is all about messaging, and it's all about, like, why are we doing this? And I think you really have to start with the data, the numbers. And so, Ben, I think you probably have a lot of autonomy in that magic pass, because you look at the data and then you say to your boss, hey, this rate is below average to the industry, like whatever data point. If we improve this by, I even go conservative, I go 5%. If we do a 5% improvement, this is going to yield millions of dollars, 5%, depending on what it is, right? And then of course your boss is going to say, Ben, go do it. Go build that program. I'm so excited for this. And so as enablement, we have to be data driven. So Ben, I love that you said, hang out with sales ops. I have the pleasure of managing rev ops and enablement. So I have them all paired together. I have top of funnel rev ops and top of funnel enablement, and they're best friends. And I have it bottom of funnel rev ops, bottom of funnel enablement. They're best friends. They do joint office hours with everyone. So you have to have that connection, because otherwise, like, I don't think the system works as well. But totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these. I mean, firstly, slight envy there, because that would be,
Yeah.
it's quite cool to hear and see. But in general, yeah, I think it's the. I mean, I sometimes joke that I talk to Steve, who's my head of international, maybe more than I do my spouse in the house, because we're always talking on projects. So I can, in a weird way, he's almost like a dotted boss really now. I've got the head of enablement globally, Sarah, in the US, but then I've got Steve Rafferty, my leader here. And one of the things he sort of says is like, he said 20 to 25% at the recent RKO, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a massive compliment, firstly, but I'm very, very close to the sun now. I'm, that's quite the pressure cake. So this is the year of delivery, and a lot of our sales enablement colleagues are seeing this is now the year to prospect, like, because some companies, like my own, for example, we've done some we're amazingly successful with growth, like we're double figure growth, like year on year, and then you're like, okay, great, but actually this year channel and our partners are going to help us grow consistently, but to get that extra icing on the cake, we've got a big push on prospecting now, and actually talking to customers. I think one of the most interesting things I ever did was I did a sales enablement summit talk once, and I asked the room, like, how many people have had a message or an email trying to sell them something, and everyone put their hand up. And then you go, how many people have had a LinkedIn message or an email, and everyone puts their hand up. And then how many people have been cold called this week? Like 3 or 4 people put their hands up. And it's like, about 10 years ago, training or sales training was all about, right, you want to be going online and sending vidyards, and you want to be doing this and this and this. And that's the future, and that's going to sell. And now, actually, if I get a phone call, and this is what a lot of CEOs, a couple of companies I've spoke to externally from RingCentral, have said that I never get rung up anymore, which they almost like miss the thing they used to slam the phone down on. So it's kind of funny. My daughter, she's at uni now, and I remember she passed a shop and there was Fila shoes, like, and she's, oh my God, these are really cool. And I was like, what? They were cool when I was young, and then they like went to the bargain sort of piece and dipped a bit, and then suddenly they've become cool again. And like telephone is the new cool, I think. That's my piece. So we're doing a lot around prospecting this year, and actually a lot around old school, picking up the phone and how to support that with modern selling.
Yeah, I love that. I think Carly's internet dropped
Yeah,
off
sure, sure,
in her village. So we can wait 2 minutes just to see if she comes back. But
sure.
so Ben, you are the master chess player, so I hear, and I have to ask you this question. How does your passion for chess translate into the world of enablement? Or does it?
That's a good question. So the actual playing of chess is useful because your mindset's a little bit more strategic, maybe it's slightly different, like neurodiverse in that regard. Um, and that helps a bit with certain sort of different frames of mind. But weirdly, my biggest thing that helps with enablement is I was a chess captain, so I inherited a team when I was about 16, and there's a lot of analytics that go into chess captaincy. Like you have to study which opponents you're going up against. You have to do some logistical stuff like booking hotels and transport and almost become an event manager and a project manager for that. As well as making sure you herd the cats of chess players into the same hall, which is often not the easiest thing. And I've done that for many years, nearly 20 or over 20 years now. Um, and uh, and one of the big things for me is that has really helped because it makes me able to sort of stakeholder manage because I've dealt with sponsorship. It makes me be able to sort of be confident to position stuff because I was pitching my chess team when I was about 18 to large businesses of why they should sponsor a bunch of 18-year-olds playing a board game that's now massive because of the Queen's Gambit on Netflix. But back then, this is wasn't as attractive a selling proposition back then. So actually, that part of my chess has arguably influenced as much as the sort of strategic mindset and stuff. I would love to say the kind of I'm very strategic and that helps with enablement. Sure, probably does somewhere deep down. I haven't really looked at it directly, but actually I've looked directly at what my chess captaincy does when it comes to enablement. And that's the bit, even in my career, not just enablement, that has helped the most because it taught me a lot of skills that were really useful to have in my 20s and into my 30s that often take many years to sort of build within an org. So that's the sort of hopefully the answer.
I have to ask you, when you were watching Queen's Gambit, were you analyzing, is this a real game? Does it actually make sense? Is this all just made up? I'm
I,
curious.
I think the best part, that's one of every good or relatively good chess player loves the Queen's Gambit because they have had hugely detailed experts helping with all the games. So they've taken some of the best games that have ever been played, and in a couple of them, they've actually improved on them. So they've actually
Really?
found better moves. So the games they're playing, all of them, even when Beth's in that sort of room playing the Russian Grandmaster and it's very fast, that game is like to as high a standard as the top grandmasters could possibly play. It's like one of the world's greatest games. So chess players loved that. And they loved the fact that they tweaked it a little bit. So it wasn't them just regurgitating someone else's game. They made it kind of their own as well. So to answer your question, yeah, I loved following the chess because the chess was actually very accurately depicted because they did see the value in investing in that because what many people don't realize is millions play chess now. Like we're talking like the subscribers to chess.com is through the roof. Like it's the second most played sport or game in the world behind soccer/football. And
Would you rewatch it? Would you rewatch the series?
I probably would, yeah. I like to give it a few years before I rewatch it, so it feels a little bit like, oh, I forgot about that type of thing. So yeah, I definitely would rewatch it. Have you guys watched it? Have you watched it?
Loved it. Loved it. Carly, are you back with us?
I think so. I can't see you guys, but if you guys can see me, then we can. This internet thing has been
Well,
killing
I
me
think
this week, so
all of
sorry.
our listeners know that you live outside of London in the lovely countryside. And, one of the beauties of that is that you don't always have great internet, right?
No, it's been terrible. We even have BT.
There you go. She's got. All right. So with that, I think we're going to wrap up. Ben, thank you so much for coming on
Thanks
uh,
for having me.
the Enablement Brew podcast. Carly, you're going to have to watch what you missed in the actual recording. But we'll see you all next time.
Thank you both. Thank you for this. It's a pleasure to be a big fan. So have a good rest of the day and have a wonderful weekend.